Somewhere along the way, GTA Online stopped feeling like a video game. It didn't happen suddenly. Rockstar never flipped a switch and turned Los Santos into a digital office building where everyone clocks in for their shift. It happened slowly, one business update at a time, one best solo money method video at a time, one argument over KD ratios at a time. Eventually, the entire game started revolving around numbers. Money numbers, kill numbers, efficiency numbers. How much money per hour? How many cargo crates per hour? What's the best weapon? The best route? The best vehicle? The safest grind? Players stopped talking about stories and started talking like investors discussing quarterly revenue. And after years of playing like that, I realized something incredibly stupid. I wasn't even having fun anymore. I'd load into GTA Online, and before I even spawned in, my brain would already start calculating. Is this lobby safe? Is there a jet griefer? Is there an oppressor flying around? What business should I run first? Is this session even worth my time? The weirdest part is that none of this was technically forced on me. GTA Online gives players complete freedom, but somehow the community collectively transformed the sandbox into a competitive economy simulator where everybody acts like either a mercenary or a stockbroker with a rocket launcher. So one day I logged in and decided I was done chasing numbers. No grinding, no optimizing, no caring about KD, no rage over cargo value. I was going to treat GTA Online like what it actually is, a giant stupid sandbox full of unpredictable people. So I spawned into a public lobby, opened the interaction menu, started a motorcycle club, and invited literally everyone in the server. That was the entire plan. No strategy, no challenge, no reward. Just inviting random people and seeing what happened. At first nobody joined, which honestly felt kind of poetic, because that's what GTA Online has become. Everybody assumes everybody else is hostile. People see an invite and immediately think it's a trap. And to be fair, in GTA Online it usually is. But eventually one guy joined, then another, then another. One dude wearing full tactical gear spawned beside me and immediately drove his motorcycle into a wall. Another player in a bright pink racing suit started punching the air for no reason. Somebody else arrived in a rusty van that looked like it survived 3 separate apocalypses. And before we even started a mission, the entire atmosphere already felt different. Nobody was flexing. Nobody cared about money. It just felt like random idiots gathering together because they were curious. So I launched a motorcycle club mission, and immediately everything went wrong. Half the group crashed into traffic within 30 seconds. One player somehow drove directly into the ocean. Somebody accidentally destroyed our own vehicle with a sticky bomb. Another guy got distracted fighting an NPC pedestrian for absolutely no reason. The mission timer was draining. We were objectively failing. And for the first time in years, I was laughing harder than I ever had during a perfectly optimized million-dollar grind, because failure stopped mattering. That's the thing I forgot about GTA Online. The game becomes infinitely funnier when nobody cares about efficiency anymore. Normally, if cargo gets destroyed, people rage quit. If a mission fails, everybody gets angry. If a random player kills you, suddenly it becomes a 30-minute revenge arc fueled entirely by wounded pride. But once nobody cares about optimization, every disaster becomes comedy. Every explosion becomes content. Every mistake becomes part of the story. And then something even stranger happened. Players started staying. Usually randoms leave after one mission, but this group didn't. After we finished, everybody just kept following each other around the city. We weren't making good money. We weren't doing anything productive. But GTA Online suddenly felt less like a competitive battlefield and more like one giant road trip with armed lunatics. Then we got attacked. Of course we did. You cannot exist peacefully in a GTA Online public lobby for more than 6 minutes before somebody decides your happiness personally offends them. A jet appeared overhead. Missiles started raining down. Motorcycles exploded instantly. One player got launched off a bridge. Somebody screamed in voice chat, and for one brief second I expected the mood to collapse. I expected everybody to start sweating, to start arguing, to start revenge spiraling. Instead, one guy typed 2 words in chat: invite him. That instantly became the philosophy of the entire session. Invite him. The jet griefer eventually landed nearby after failing to wipe us out completely, probably expecting angry messages. probably expecting retaliation. Instead, he received a motorcycle club invite, and somehow he joined. 5 minutes earlier, he was trying to ruin the session. Now he was escorting our convoy in a stolen helicopter, while another player blasted terrible music through proximity chat that sounded like it was recorded inside a microwave. That's when I realized something important about GTA Online. Most players are not actually toxic. They're bored. There's a difference. People grief because they want stimulation. People rage bait because chaos is the only thing left that feels emotionally engaging after thousands of hours. The game conditions everybody into expecting hostility, so eventually players start creating hostility just to feel something. But the second you offer people an alternative, something weird happens. A lot of them take it. Not all of them, obviously. Some players are committed to being demons. At one point, a guy in a stealth jet spent 20 straight minutes trying to obliterate us while we attempted one of the simplest biker missions imaginable. We had motorcycles, vans, civilian cars, and one dude inexplicably driving a tractor. The jet circled overhead like an angry mosquito carrying military-grade explosives. Every time he killed somebody, the victim would just respawn laughing while the rest of the convoy continued driving in completely different directions. Nobody retaliated. Nobody got angry. One player actually stopped to clap at the jet after getting exploded. And eventually, the jet player left. Because rage bait only works if somebody gets angry. That realization genuinely changed the way I see online games. So much of modern multiplayer design revolves around emotional pressure. Daily objectives, FOMO, competitive rankings, artificial scarcity, and GTA Online amplifies all of it because players themselves become part of the pressure system. Players become obstacles, players become stress generators, players become unpaid middle managers enforcing grind culture. But the second you stop participating emotionally, the entire structure starts breaking apart. A failed mission becomes a funny clip. A destroyed vehicle becomes a cinematic explosion. A griefer becomes a potential teammate. A wasted hour becomes a memorable story. And once I noticed that, I couldn't unsee it. The group kept growing. Every mission added more people. Sometimes we invited players who attacked us. Sometimes random spectators joined after seeing 20 motorcycles flying down the highway like a post-apocalyptic parade. The group itself became visually ridiculous. Military outfits standing beside alien costumes, rich casino characters beside swamp-looking hillbillies. One guy wore a pristine white suit, while another looked like he lived permanently inside a gas station parking lot. It looked less like a criminal organization and more like society collapsed and everybody decided to cope through motorcycles. At one point, we attempted a simple delivery mission that should have taken 6 minutes. It took 40. Not because enemies were difficult, not because the mission was complicated, but because every 30 seconds, something absurd happened. Somebody drove off a cliff. 2 players started boxing each other in the middle of the road while the rest of us waited. One guy accidentally trapped himself inside a clothing store while cops flooded the street outside. Then we got distracted by a random NPC driving a bus, so naturally, the entire convoy hijacked it and transformed the mission into a moving disaster movie. And somehow those 40 completely unproductive minutes were more memorable than entire years of efficient grinding. That's when the nostalgia hit me. Not nostalgia for old GTA. Nostalgia for old multiplayer gaming. Back when people logged on because they wanted stories. Back when random interactions mattered more than progression systems. Back when multiplayer games felt like playgrounds instead of self-improvement routines. I realized that none of my best gaming memories were ever tied to rewards. I don't remember how much money I earned during my favorite GTA sessions years ago. I don't remember my KD ratio. I don't remember what level I unlocked specific vehicles. I remember stupid moments. I remember accidental teamwork. I remember chaotic road trips. I remember laughing so hard I physically couldn't breathe because somebody failed in the dumbest way imaginable. Those are the things that survive, not numbers. And the craziest part is that GTA Online is actually perfectly designed for this kind of experience. The sandbox itself is incredible. The city is incredible. The vehicle variety is incredible. The problem was never really the game. The problem was the mindset. We optimized the fun out of it. Once I realized that, every lobby started feeling different. Instead of seeing threats everywhere, I started seeing possibilities. That random sniper on a rooftop might become part of the convoy. That oppressor player might just be bored. That low-level player wandering through the city alone might just need an invite. Even toxic interactions became entertaining because they no longer had emotional power over the session. Somebody destroys cargo? Fine. Invite them afterward. Somebody sends hate messages? Reply with a motorcycle club invite. The funniest moment of the entire night happened hours later. By this point, the group had become massive. Dirt bikes, helicopters, sports cars, armored vehicles, absolute nonsense everywhere. And then one player tried to orbital cannon us. Now, normally this would trigger immediate outrage because the orbital cannon is basically the physical manifestation of GTA Online rage culture. Instead, the moment the explosion happened, somebody in voice chat screamed, "He spent $700,000 to join the event." The entire lobby lost it, and somehow the orbital cannon guy eventually joined too. At that point, the whole thing stopped feeling like gameplay and started feeling like some bizarre social experiment happening organically inside one of the most chaotic online games ever made. Nobody knew each other. Nobody had a plan. There was no reward. But people stayed because the atmosphere itself became the reward. That's something modern multiplayer games constantly forget. Fun is social, not numerical. You can have the best progression systems in the world, but if every interaction feels emotionally exhausting, eventually players stop actually enjoying themselves. They just continue out of habit. And I think a lot of GTA Online players are stuck in that cycle without even realizing it. They grind because they think they need more money. But the second they get the money, they need another business. Then another vehicle. Then another update. Then another grind. Meanwhile, some of the best moments in the game cost absolutely nothing. Driving through the desert at sunset with 10 random strangers. Watching somebody accidentally launch themselves off a mountain. Defending a completely pointless convoy with your life because everybody committed emotionally to the stupidity. Standing in a giant circle while police helicopters crash around you because nobody wants the moment to end. That's the real content, not the grind. By the end of the night, Los Santos barely resembled the city I originally joined. Players who started as enemies were escorting deliveries. Former griefers were protecting low-level players. Random spectators had become convoy members. And the funniest part was how fragile the entire thing actually was. None of it happened because of mechanics. None of it happened because of rewards. It happened because a handful of random players collectively decided not to take the game seriously for a few hours. That was enough. No manifesto, no strategy, just refusing to participate in the emotional arms race modern multiplayer culture constantly pushes. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I realize this applies far beyond GTA Online. A lot of games become miserable when players optimize away every ounce of unpredictability. The moment every interaction becomes transactional, the soul starts disappearing. And weirdly enough, the cure is often incredibly simple. Invite people, laugh at failure, stop obsessing over efficiency, turn enemies into participants, treat chaos like content instead of catastrophe. That mindset completely transformed the game for me. Now, when I join GTA Online, I don't think about profits or businesses or whether the session is worth it. I look for weirdness. I look for players doing dumb things. I look for opportunities to create stories instead of income. And suddenly the game feels alive again. Not balanced, not fair, definitely not efficient, but alive. Which is honestly what GTA Online was probably supposed to be all along. A giant, unpredictable social sandbox where absurd things happen because human beings are inherently chaotic. The money was never the point. The KD ratio was never the point. The businesses were never the point. The point was the stories people accidentally create together. And somewhere along the way, a lot of us forgot that. So now every time I load into a lobby, I do the same thing. I start a motorcycle club. I invite everyone. And whatever happens next becomes the real game. Sometimes nobody joins. Sometimes the lobby instantly turns into a war zone. Sometimes griefers destroy everything before the session even begins. But sometimes a group forms. A weird, dysfunctional, hilarious temporary society built entirely around the idea that fun matters more than numbers. And those sessions remind me why I loved multiplayer games in the first place. Not because they gave me progression, but because they gave me unpredictable human moments I could never script. At the very end of the session, after hours of chaos, the convoy gathered near the beach during sunset. Motorcycles lined the sand. Helicopters circled overhead. Police lights flashed in the distance. Random explosions happened for reasons nobody fully understood. Players honked constantly like the city itself was celebrating. Nobody wanted to leave. Not because there were rewards waiting, not because we still needed money, but because everybody understood the feeling was temporary. Tomorrow, everyone would return to different lobbies. Different strangers, different chaos, different grinds. But for a few hours, GTA Online stopped being exhausting. It stopped feeling like digital labor and became what it probably should have been all along. A playground. Turns out the best thing in GTA Online was never the money. It was other players.